Hi everyone, my name is Chantal Hofstee, and it's really nice to be here and to be able to share a little bit with you about what I do. I'm a clinical psychologist registered with the New Zealand Psychologist Board, and I work with both children and adults. And anxiety is one of the topics that comes up quite often. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about what you can do about a child's anxiety from a psychological perspective. But first, let's briefly talk about anxiety and what it is from that same psychological perspective. Anxiety is part of one of the four basic emotions, and it's part of the basic emotion fear, which is very healthy, normal emotion that all of us have. So in essence, there's nothing wrong with being scared, being anxious, being fearful. We have that emotion because we need it in order to survive. It becomes a problem, though, when that emotion is present in situations where it is not helpful to our survival. So when it becomes more of an obstacle than a warning system, because that's what it is designed for. It's designed to warn the body, to warn the brain there is a danger, and it's designed to get the whole system ready for fight or flight. And that's really good. That really serves us. That is what keeps us alive. It becomes an issue when a child or an adult feels anxious, feels scared, feels fearful in situations that are actually not a danger, when there is actually no threat. But still, the body and the brain react as if there is a real threat. So for example, if there is a disaster, it's very, very normal if a child is scared. But if a child has to go to school and is scared, then that becomes an issue. And it's no longer helpful. It actually is an obstacle for that child to develop healthily and learn the skills that it needs to learn. The issue with anxiety is that it's not always easy to pick up, because children that are prone to feeling anxious often are quite good at hiding that away for a long time. Not all children, but a lot of children will keep it to themselves because they don't want to upset the parent, or they don't want to be different. So there is a challenge in picking up when a child is feeling anxious. And there are different things that can indicate that that is an issue for a child. And that could be things like lack of appetite, not being able to concentrate, developmental stagnation, or even going back in development. So things that the child could do earlier, and all of a sudden it's not able to do that anymore. It can be withdrawing, or it can actually be getting stuck in emotions. So reacting overly emotional to things. So those could be signals that a child might be struggling with anxiety. And those symptoms make a lot of sense if you think about anxiety as a brain and body response to a perceived threat. So remember that the response of the brain and the body is the same as when there was an actual threat. But the body is responding in situations where there is no actual threat, but there is a perceived threat. So the child is perceiving a threat. It's seeing a situation that it feels that it can't cope with, either because it doesn't have the skills or it doesn't have the confidence. So the body and the brain react as if there was a real threat. And that's where, again, the fight and flight system, fight or flight response of the body kicks in. And if you look at that, it makes perfect sense that the child is not able to concentrate. It's not really able to learn. It's not able to really listen. Or integrate solutions or new information, because it's so focused. That's what the brain does. It focuses on the threat. So when the brain feels threatened, it focuses just on the threat, and other parts of the brain are on lock. It's like putting the handbrake on your brain, because you can't. When you feel threatened, you can't concentrate, you can't learn, you can't listen, you don't feel like eating. There might be sleep issues. So all of those things can be signals that this is happening for this child. Now, what to do about that if that is the case? There is not one solution, and I think every child is different. Every child needs different things. But what I do think that all children and all adults have in common is to be, especially when they're feeling anxious, is to feel connected to somebody, to feel connected to a parent, to feel connected to a teacher, to feel connected. Because what we want, if you look at it from a psychological perspective, is we want the brain to start moving away from the fear response, from the fight and flight response, and we want it to move away to a place where it feels, or away from that towards a safe state. So we want the brain to start feeling safe instead of unsafe, because when the brain feels safe, when it gets the message that the situation is safe, the fear response calms down. So the child calms down. The areas of the brain that were locked down are unlocked, so the child has access to all the resources again. It can start to learn again. It can start to integrate the information, and it can start to connect. But I think that it starts with connecting. Now, I teach a skill that I think is essential to connecting to any child that is emotional, and I'm really briefly going to go through that with you. We do this automatically when children are happy. We do it automatically when they're sad, but we don't do this automatically when they're either scared or angry. Yet the brain needs that same response. And to sum it up, it is mirroring and then linking. Mirroring is the first step, and you do that by simply making eye contact and mirroring the emotion that you can see in the child. And if it's not quite clear what the child is feeling, then you do a guess based on the information that you have. So for example, if I work with a child that I think is feeling anxious, I would say, oh, that must be really scary. Or I would say, oh, I get the idea that this is really scary for you. I get the idea that you're feeling a bit afraid. So I would link, or I would mirror the emotion with my facial expressions, with my tone of voice, with my energy, and I would try to stay as close as possible to the words that the child uses, because it chose those words for very good reasons. And that is the first step. And what happens then is that the brain feels connected, it feels understood, it feels acknowledged, it feels validated, and then it can't help but start to calm down, and the fear response starts to calm down. And then the second step is to link. So what you do is you link the emotion to the trigger, to the thing or the event that is causing that emotion. So for example, that could be, oh, I can see that you're scared about going to school. And because you don't want to go to school, you're scared about going to school, if that is the case for this particular child. So I acknowledge the emotion and I link it to the event that is causing the emotion. And then the brain can't help but to calm down and to move from the state of feeling unsafe to a state of feeling safe. Not because the threat is gone, but it feels connected, it feels understood, it feels validated. That's where the fear response in the moment calms down. That's where the fight and flight response calms down. And that's where the brain of the child is actually able to listen and to integrate information and together with you start talking about possible solutions. And when you allow the child's brain to calm down before you move into solutions, suggestions, that is where you actually get somewhere with the child. And that's where the emotion is processed. Because often when we see a child or an adult that has an emotion that we find uncomfortable, we try to just get rid of it as quickly as possible. Or maybe you should do this. Or have you tried this? Or what about this? And why are you feeling that way? It's really not that bad. And all those messages just push the brain further into feeling unsafe and unheard. So this was really, really briefly a skill that I call mirroring, that I think is really useful for therapists, teachers, parents, and especially very useful when you're working or dealing with children that suffer from anxiety. Of course, there is a lot more background and a lot more to this. So this was just a really brief explanation of a skill that you could try when you have children in your class or in your family or in your circle of friends that you think might be dealing with this. I teach courses on mindfulness, and this skill is part of the mindfulness course. So if you would like more information about that, or if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. My website is www.renewyourmind.co.nz, and I have a private practice in West Auckland in Titirangi. So I'm happy to talk further and give more information. Unfortunately, I have to shoot off because I'm actually teaching a course tonight, so I won't be around to answer any questions, but feel free to get in touch. So that's renewyourmind.co.nz. Thank you very much.